I will show you how to create the 3 different tools for the player. These are chopping, killing and watering. We will create the states and transitions for the state machine. In the previous tutorial, I showed you how to create a state machine for the player and the idle and walk state. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to create the chopping, tilling and watering states. In the state machine, let's add a new node. Choose node and click create and rename this to chopping. Let's add a script and we'll call this chopping state and create that. Then in the scripts folder in state machine, open up the node state script again and select everything, just copy that and then go back to the chopping state and then just paste that in and then copy node state and then change that on the extends. So we'll extend node state and then just remove these two as they come from node state. Now if we go to test scene player, which is under the test folder, let's just run this scene. And what we need to do is to allow the player to move into the chopping state. So we need to create some tools and then allow the player to select the tool to then move into the chopping state. So let's just close that. Then head over to the scripts folder and create a new folder and call this globals. Inside the globals folder, create a new script and call this data type. And open up the data types script. Then we'll create an enum and call this tools. And the enumerations will go none, axe, wood, till, ground, water, crops, plant, corn, and plant, tomato. So throughout the game, we're going to use these different tools to perform these actions. So we'll just create the enum now up front. Then we wish to access the tools from anywhere within our script. So let's remove extends node and we'll call this class name data type. Then let's go to the player script and let's export a variable. So say at export for current tool is data types dot tools equals data types dot tools dot none. So we'll just default that to none for now. Now let's head back over to the idle state and in on next transitions, we can say if player dot current tool equals the data types tools dot axewood, then transition to chopping. Now let's test the scene. So go to test scene player. Let's just run the test scene. And as you can see, we've got the current state here. Let's just go to our player and open that scene. Let's just bring the window back. And let's just change the current tool here. So we just say axewood and we can see that the current state has moved in from idle into chopping. Let's just stop that. So now that we can move into the chopping state, let's make some more modifications to the chopping state script. So when we reach the on enter, we want to animate the sprite based on the player's direction. And for each chopping animation, once the animation stops playing, we want to then exit the state and go back to idle. So let's begin writing the code for that. So let's export some variables. So say export for player and then export for animated sprite 2D and then the animated sprite 2D. Then in on enter, we say if player.player direction equals vector2 dot up, then the animated sprite play and then chopping back. So we can view our animations again from the animated sprite 2D and we want to run this animation here. So I'm just going to write the rest of this code. And as you can see, this code is very similar to the code which we've used previously in our idle and our walk state. However, we would like to just play the animation as we enter the state. So we're just going to leave the physics process empty. Then on our next transition, we need to check if the animated sprite is playing. So we can say if not animated sprite 2D is playing, then we can transition back to idle. And then once we transition, we can just say on exit animated sprite 2D dot stop animation. So this will stop this animation as we move back to our idle state. But it should have already stopped anyway, but this just makes sure. The next thing to do is to just go into your animations, and for chopping back, make sure looping is now off. For chopping front, looping off, chopping left, looping off, chopping right, looping off. So we only want to play the animation one time. So as we go into on enter, the animation will play. Then we check if the animation has stopped playing, and if it has stopped playing, we transition back to idle. Let's go to the test scene player again, and let's just run that. Okay, so that's currently not working. What we need to do is just go back to player and click chopping, and just make sure we assign our player to those export variables. So we've got the player variable and the animated sprite 2D variable. Now go back to test scene player, and let's just run that one more time. So as we can see, the animation is going between the idle state and the chopping state. Let's just go back to our player. Okay, so on the player, we've got it on Axwood. That's why it's switching between the two. So we go into the state, it plays the animation, and then comes back out. Let's just change that to none. So we're now in idle. Let's change that to Axwood, and it's now Axwood. Okay, let's stop that. If we go back to the idle script, the next thing we need to do is to only trigger transition into chopping when we actually press the mouse left button down, and this will act as the chopping action. So let's go to project settings, input map, add a new action called hit, add, and then add button here, and for the event, in the listening for input, just click the left mouse button down and click OK, and we'll just close that. Then head over to scripts, open up the game input event script, and let's add a new function called static function, call it useTool, and we'll return a type of bool, and we want to say var useTool value, which is a type of bool, and then use input dot is action just pressed, and then pass in hit, and that is the name of our action which we've just created, and then we'll return the variable useTool value. Then head back over to the idle script, and in the idle state script, we can just check for the player's current tool, and in the game input event, check if we're actually using the tool hit event. Now let's test the script, go back to test scene player, let's run the test scene, and then let's just press the left mouse button down. So remember on the player, we need to have Axwood set here, because if we just set that back to none, and then just view our game, if I click the mouse button down, I can still move left and right because that's the walk state, as you can see here in the current states under the window. Just move this up. So walking, then let's just activate the Axwood, bring the window in, and then if I click the mouse button, and I can move all the different directions and click in the mouse button. So if I'm walking and I click, it doesn't show the axe animation because that is what the state machine will do. We are making sure that we transition to the correct state when our conditions are met. So when we're walking, we don't want to be able to chop at the same time. And then chop, stop, and then chop. Okay, let's close that window. Now for our tilling state, let's create a new node on the state machine. We'll just create a node and then rename this to tilling. Let's attach a script and we'll call this tilling state. And let's create that. Then head over to the chopping script and just select everything in the file. Let's copy that, go back to the tilling script, and then just paste the content. So everything is the same for the tilling state and the chopping state. However, we need to change the animations here. Let's open up Animated Sprite 2D and let's just check the tilling animation. So tilling back, let's turn looping off for the tilling front, tilling left, turn it off, and tilling right, turn looping off for that. Then, instead of chopping, we just need to say tilling. Let's just copy and paste those values there. Now let's head back over to our idle script and let's just copy these two lines here. And we'll say if the player current tool, and instead of Axwood, use till ground, and we want to still keep our game input event as useTool, but this time we'll transition to tilling. We're now ready to test our scene, so go to test scene player, run the test scene, and let's just click on our player, let's just view our current tool. So this is now on axe wood. So if we go left, we've got axe wood. Let's just change the tool now to till ground and open up the window. And we can see we still got another error here. And this is because we haven't assigned our variables again. So let's just stop the test scene. And on tilling, let's just assign player and assign animated sprite 2D. Go back to the test scene. And when we move left, we now have tilling. So you can see the current state change in the bottom. And that's everything working for our tilling state. Now for the watering state, this will allow the player to water crops and then they'll grow. So we'll go to our player, add child node, create a node and call this watering. Then attach a script and we'll call this watering state. And we'll get our tilling script, copy everything, go back to the watering script and then paste that in. So just save everything. Then on the watering node, let's just assign our player and assign our animated sprite 2D. Then let's choose the animated sprite 2D, and on our watering animations, let's just turn looping off for each of the animations. And then where we have tilling back, let's just update this as well. Now let's head back to the idle script, and we just need to copy these two lines once again. So we can say player.currentTool is equal to water crops, and we still want to use the tool. So once we have this tool, we can then go to our watering state. Let's go back to the test scene player and let's test that. So select the player again, and as we move left and press our left mouse button down, we're still tilling the ground. I'll just open the output window as well so we can see that. So tilling, idle, and then let's just choose water crops, and we can see that we are now using the water crops animation. So I'll just close that window. Now that brings us to the end of this tutorial on how to create the different tool states for the player. So we have chopping, tilling, and watering. In future tutorials, I'll be showing you how to create a UI so that the player can choose the tool state for the character. If you like what you've seen in this tutorial, please remember to hit like and subscribe so that you receive updates for all my other tutorials and any new content that I will be showing. Thank you for watching.